The small village of Millbrook had always been peaceful. Farmers worked their fields, children played in the streets, and life moved at a gentle pace. But everything changed when the attacks began. At first, it was just the chickens. Mrs. Henderson found 3 of her hens torn apart in their coop one morning. The metal wire had been ripped open like paper. Everyone assumed it was a fox or perhaps a wild dog passing through. Then the attacks got worse. Old Man Peterson's goat disappeared, leaving only bloodstains and tracks leading into the forest. The Sharma family's cat never came home. Soon, no one let their pets outside after dark. The village became gripped with fear as whispers spread about what might be lurking in the shadows. Sarah Mitchell was different from most people in Millbrook. While others locked their doors and shuttered their windows at sunset, she remained calm. The 28-year-old teacher had moved to the village 2 years ago, seeking a quieter life after the chaos of the city. She lived alone in a small cottage at the edge of town, right where the houses ended and the wild forest began. One evening, Sarah sat on her porch reading a book as twilight painted the sky purple and orange. The other villagers thought she was crazy for staying outside so late. They called warnings from their windows telling her to get inside. But Sarah just smiled and waved. She had always felt a connection to nature that others didn't understand. Animals never scared her. She believed that most creatures were simply misunderstood. That night, as darkness fell completely, Sarah heard something. It was a low growl, deep and menacing, coming from the tree line just beyond her property. Her heart began to beat faster, but she didn't run. Instead, she stood up slowly and peered into the darkness. 2 yellow eyes stared back at her, reflecting the light from her porch. They were positioned low to the ground and they didn't blink. The creature stepped forward into the dim light. It was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. It looked like a wolf, but much larger, with matted black fur and scars covering its body. Its teeth were bared and saliva dripped from its jaws. This was the killer everyone had been talking about. This was the beast that had terrorized Millbrook for weeks. And now it stood just 20 feet from where Sarah was standing. Most people would have screamed. Most would have run inside and locked every door and window, but Sarah did something no one expected. She stood perfectly still and looked directly into those yellow eyes. She didn't show fear. She didn't show aggression. She simply looked at the creature with curiosity and something else, something that might have been compassion. The wolf-like beast tilted its head, confused by her reaction. It took another step forward, growling louder now, testing her. Sarah could smell its wild scent carried on the evening breeze. She could see the tension in its muscles, ready to spring. Every instinct told her she should be terrified. But deep down, Sarah sensed something else beneath the monster's fierce exterior. She saw pain in those eyes, not just hunger or cruelty. "Hello there," Sarah said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've had a rough time, haven't you?" The creature's ears twitched at the sound of her voice. For a moment, the growling stopped. They stood there in the growing darkness, woman and beast, separated by 20 feet of grass and 1,000 years of evolution. Neither moved. Neither backed down. It was a moment that would change everything, though Sarah didn't know it yet. The beast took another step closer, then another. Sarah could now see the details of its face, the old wounds, the missing patches of fur, the way one of its eyes seemed clouded. This wasn't just a ruthless killer. This was a survivor, something that had fought and suffered and learned that the world was cruel. Her heart ached for it, even as her mind warned her of the danger. Then, with a final snarl that seemed more like frustration than threat, the creature turned and disappeared back into the forest. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her legs felt weak, but she was smiling. She had just met the monster of Millbrook, and somehow she had survived. More than that, she felt she had connected with it in some small way. As she went inside that night, Sarah's mind was already working on a plan. She didn't want to trap this creature or hurt it. She wanted to understand it. She wanted to help it. And she had an idea about how to start. The next morning, Sarah went to the butcher shop in the village center. Tom Bradley, the butcher, looked surprised to see her asking for meat scraps and bones. "Planning to get a dog, Miss Mitchell?" he asked while wrapping up several pounds of leftovers. Sarah just smiled and said she wanted to help the stray animals in the area. Tom shook his head, thinking about the beast that had been killing livestock. "Best be careful," he warned. "There's something dangerous out there." Sarah took the meat home and prepared it carefully. She knew she was taking a risk, The entire village had been talking about organizing a hunting party to track down and kill the creature. Her neighbor, Mr. Davies, had even brought his rifle down from the attic. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that violence wasn't the answer. That evening, as the sun began to set, she placed a large bowl of meat and bones on the far edge of her property, right where the forest began. She sat on her porch again, waiting and watching. An hour passed, then 2. The darkness grew deeper. Sarah had almost given up when she heard movement in the trees. The creature emerged slowly, more cautiously than before. It spotted Sarah immediately and its body tensed. But then the wind shifted and it caught the scent of the food. The beast's head turned toward the bowl. For several long minutes, the creature didn't move. It seemed to be trying to understand what was happening. Why would this human leave food? Was it a trap? Sarah remained perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. Finally, hunger won over suspicion. The beast crept forward, keeping its eyes on Sarah the entire time. When it reached the bowl, it sniffed the contents carefully before beginning to eat. Sarah watched in fascination. Up close, even from a distance, she could see how thin the creature was beneath its thick fur. Its ribs showed when it moved a certain way. This wasn't a ruthless killer by choice, she realized. This was a desperate animal trying to survive. It had probably been injured or cast out from its pack, forced to fend for itself. The livestock it had killed weren't acts of cruelty, but acts of necessity. The beast ate quickly, constantly glancing up to check if Sarah was still there. When the bowl was empty, it licked it clean and then did something unexpected. Instead of running back into the forest immediately, it sat down. It was still 20 feet from Sarah's porch, but it sat there looking at her. They stayed like that for almost 10 minutes, human and beast, studying each other in the moonlight. "I'll leave more tomorrow," Sarah said quietly. The creature's ears perked up at her voice. Then, with a slight nod of its head that might have been imagination, it stood and walked slowly back into the forest. Sarah felt her heart soaring. It was working. She had made contact. This was just the beginning. Over the next week, Sarah continued her nightly routine. Every evening, she would place a bowl of food at the edge of her property, and every evening the creature would come to eat. Each night it seemed a little less tense, a little more comfortable. The attacks on livestock in the village had stopped completely. The other villagers thought the beast had moved on to terrorize some other town. They celebrated their good fortune, not knowing that their monster was being fed just a few hundred yards away. Sarah began to notice more details about the creature. Its right front paw had a slight limp. There was a long scar across its snout. Its left ear had a chunk missing from what must have been a terrible fight. These weren't marks of a ruthless killer, but badges of survival. Every scar told a story of pain and perseverance. Sarah felt an even deeper connection growing between them. On the 8th night, something different happened. The creature arrived earlier than usual, while there was still a bit of twilight in the sky. It ate its food as normal, but when it finished, instead of sitting at a distance, it took 3 steps closer to the porch, then 3 more. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The beast was now only 10 feet away. She could hear its breathing, see the intelligence in its eyes. It was learning to trust her. "You're beautiful, you know," Sarah whispered. "Underneath all that fear and pain, you're absolutely beautiful." The creature's tail, which she had never seen move before, gave the slightest wag. It was such a small gesture, but to Sarah it meant everything. This ruthless killer, this terror of Millbrook, was beginning to show its true nature. It wasn't a monster at all. It was just a lonely, hurt animal that needed someone to care. But Sarah knew her secret couldn't last forever. That same evening, after the creature had left, she heard raised voices from the village. A meeting was being held at the town hall. Mr. Davies was insisting they needed to hunt down the beast before it returned. Others agreed. They wanted to form a search party and track it through the forest. Sarah realized with growing dread that she was running out of time. She had to find a way to protect her new friend before the villagers decided to take matters into their own hands. Sarah attended the village meeting that night, her stomach twisted with anxiety. The town hall was packed with worried faces and angry voices. Mr. Davies stood at the front, his rifle propped against the wall beside him. "We've been lucky these past few days," he announced to the crowd. "The attacks have stopped, but that doesn't mean the beast is gone. It could return any time. We need to act now, track it down, and end this threat permanently." Many heads nodded in agreement. Mrs. Henderson stood up, her voice shaking as she described finding her chickens torn apart. Others shared their stories of fear and loss. The mood in the room was turning dark, transforming from worry into something more dangerous, a thirst for revenge. Sarah knew she had to speak up, even if it meant revealing what she had been doing. She raised her hand and stood. All eyes turned to her. "What if the creature isn't a threat anymore?" she asked carefully. "What if there's another way to handle this situation?" Mr. Davies frowned. "Another way? Miss Mitchell, this thing has killed our animals and put us all in danger. There's only one way to deal with a predator like that." Sarah took a deep breath. "But what if the attack stopped because the creature found another food source? What if it's not interested in hurting anyone anymore?" The room erupted in confused chatter. Tom Bradley, the butcher, stood up with a puzzled expression.
"Sarah, are you saying what I think you're saying?"
"Have you been feeding it?" The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes were on her now, some suspicious, others shocked. Sarah felt her face flush, but she stood her ground. "Yes," she admitted. "I have been leaving food for it. And since I started, there haven't been any attacks, have there?" The reaction was immediate and intense. Some people were furious, accusing her of putting the entire village at risk. Others were simply confused, unable to understand why anyone would help a dangerous animal. Mr. Davies was red-faced with anger. "You've been protecting that monster? Do you have any idea how reckless that is? What happens when you stop feeding it? What happens when it decides your offerings aren't enough?" Sarah tried to explain about the creature's injuries, about how it was clearly desperate and alone, about the trust they had been building. But her words were drowned out by angry shouts. The mayor, a round man named Gerald Thompson, banged his gavel on the podium. "Order, everyone calm down." When the room finally quieted, he turned to Sarah. "Miss Mitchell, I understand you have a kind heart, but you've put yourself and potentially all of us in danger. This creature, whatever it is, has proven itself to be a killer." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "It's not a killer by nature," she insisted. "It was starving and desperate. Any animal would do the same in its position. I've been watching it every night. It's intelligent and capable of trust, if we just give it a chance." But Mayor Thompson cut her off. "I'm sorry, Sarah, but we can't take that chance. The hunting party will proceed as planned. Tomorrow at dawn we'll track this creature and deal with it once and for all." That night Sarah couldn't sleep. She paced her small cottage, her mind racing with worry. The creature would arrive soon for its evening meal, completely unaware that a hunting party would be coming for it in the morning. She had to warn it somehow, had to protect it. But how do you warn a wild animal of danger? How do you make it understand that it needs to run far away and never return? When the time came, Sarah placed an extra large portion of food in the bowl and waited on her porch. Her heart ached as she watched the tree line, knowing this might be the last time she would see her unusual friend. Right on schedule, the creature emerged from the forest. But tonight was different. Instead of approaching cautiously, it walked directly toward the porch, its steps confident and sure. It had learned to trust Sarah completely. The beast ate its meal, but it seemed to sense something was wrong. It kept looking up at Sarah, tilting its head as if asking a question. Sarah wiped away tears that had started to fall. "You need to go," she whispered. "Far away from here. They're coming for you tomorrow, and I don't know how to stop them." The creature finished eating, and then, for the first time, it approached the porch steps. Sarah held her breath as the beast climbed the first step, then the second. Her heart pounded as it came closer than it had ever been before. Now she could see every detail. The amber flecks in its yellow eyes, the way its breath formed small clouds in the cool night air, the silver mixed into its dark fur showing its age. The creature stopped just inches from where she sat. Slowly, carefully, it lowered its massive head and placed it on her knee. Sarah gasped. Tears flowed freely now as she tentatively reached out her hand. The creature didn't flinch as her fingers touched its fur for the first time. She stroked its head gently, feeling the warmth of its body, the steady rhythm of its breathing. "Oh, you beautiful thing," she sobbed. "You're not a monster at all, are you?" The creature's eyes closed, and for just a moment it looked peaceful, content, safe. It was a moment of perfect connection, of complete trust. But Sarah knew it couldn't last. As much as her heart was breaking, she had to make the creature leave. She stood up abruptly, causing it to step back in confusion. "Go!" she said firmly, louder than she intended. "You have to go now, run!" The creature just stared at her, not understanding the sudden change. Sarah felt her heart shatter, but she knew what she had to do. She picked up a stick and threw it toward the beast, not to hit it but to scare it. Go, get out of here! The creature backed away, confusion and hurt clear in its eyes. Sarah forced herself to remain firm, even as her heart broke into pieces. Leave, you're not safe here! She waved her arms and shouted, doing everything she could to drive it away. The beast hesitated, taking one last long look at her, and then it turned and ran into the darkness of the forest. Sarah collapsed on her porch steps, sobbing uncontrollably. She had just driven away the only one who understood, the only one she had connected with in months. That night felt endless. Sarah didn't sleep at all. She kept replaying the moment when the creature had placed its head on her knee, the trust in its eyes, the warmth of its presence. And now she had destroyed that trust to save its life. As dawn approached, she heard voices and footsteps. The hunting party was gathering. Mr. Davies led the group, about 15 men with rifles and tracking dogs. They assembled at the edge of the village, right near Sarah's property. Sarah rushed out to meet them, desperate to buy more time. Please, she begged. Give it one more day. Let me prove that it's not dangerous anymore. But Mr. Davies shook his head. We've made our decision, Miss Mitchell. This ends today. The creature has had too much time to cause harm. We're sorry you got attached, but this is for the safety of everyone. The hunting dogs were already pulling at their leashes, excited by the scent trail leading into the forest. Sarah watched helplessly as the men disappeared into the trees. The dogs barked excitedly, following the trail that the creature had left countless times on its way to her cottage. She knew exactly where it would lead them, to whatever den or hiding place the beast called home. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. She had inadvertently helped them track her friend. Every night of feeding had created a clear path right to its doorstep. Unable to stand by and do nothing, Sarah grabbed her coat and followed the hunting party into the forest. She could hear them ahead, the dogs barking, the men shouting to each other. She pushed through branches and jumped over fallen logs, desperate to reach them before they found the creature. Her lungs burned and her legs ached, but she kept running. She had to get there first. She had to do something, anything, to save the life she had worked so hard to protect. The forest grew denser and darker. Sarah realized she was in a part of the woods she had never explored before. Ancient trees towered above her, their branches blocking out most of the morning light. She could hear water running nearby, probably a stream. The sounds of the hunting party were getting closer now. They had slowed down, probably getting close to their target. Sarah's heart raced as she pushed through a final thick cluster of bushes and emerged into a small clearing. What she saw took her breath away. The hunting party had stopped at the edge of a rocky outcropping. Below, in a small cave entrance, the creature stood protectively in front of something. At first, Sarah couldn't see what it was guarding. Then she heard them, small whimpers and yips. Puppies. The ruthless killer of Millbrook was a mother protecting her babies. Everything suddenly made sense. The desperate attacks, the constant hunger, the fierce determination to survive. She hadn't been feeding a monster. She had been feeding a mother. Hold your fire, Sarah shouted, running toward the men. Mr. Davies turned, surprised to see her. Miss Mitchell, you shouldn't be here. This is dangerous. But Sarah pushed past him and stood between the hunters and the mother wolf dog. She has puppies, Sarah said breathlessly. She's been trying to feed her babies this whole time. That's why she attacked the livestock. That's why she was so desperate. The men looked uncertain now. They could see the small furry shapes moving in the shadows behind their mother. Even Mr. Davies lowered his rifle slightly. That may be, he said slowly, but that doesn't change what she is. If anything, a mother with pups to protect is even more dangerous. The hunting dogs strained at their leashes, barking wildly. The mother creature growled low and deep, her body tense and ready to fight to the death for her young. Sarah stepped closer to the cave, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. Please, she said to the creature, let me help you. I know you're scared, but these men will kill you if you fight. Trust me one more time. The creature looked at Sarah, recognition flickering in her yellow eyes. For a moment, the growling stopped. Sarah could see the mother weighing her options. Fight and probably die. Or trust the human who had fed her every night for the past week. Sarah, step away from there right now, Mayor Thompson commanded. He had caught up with the group and was panting from the exertion. That animal is dangerous, especially with young to protect. But Sarah ignored him. She kept her eyes locked on the mother creature, speaking softly and calmly. I know you understand me somehow. I know you remember how I helped you. Let me help you again. Let me save your babies. The creature took a tentative step forward, then stopped. Behind her, one of the puppies stumbled out of the cave, a tiny ball of fur with oversized paws. It couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. The mother quickly nudged it back with her nose, but not before the hunting party saw it. Mrs. Henderson, who had been so angry about her chickens, put her hand to her heart. "Oh my," she whispered. "They're just babies." Sarah saw the mood beginning to shift. "She's not a ruthless killer," she said to the group. "She's a mother who was starving and desperate. She did what any of us would do to feed our children. Since I started feeding her, the attack stopped immediately. She doesn't want to hurt anyone. She just wants her babies to survive." Mr. Davies looked at his rifle, then at the mother and her pups, then back at his rifle. His shoulders sagged as he lowered the weapon completely. The tension in the clearing was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everyone stood frozen, waiting to see what would happen next. The mother creature watched the humans carefully, her body still positioned defensively in front of her den. Sarah could see the exhaustion in the animal's eyes, the way her legs trembled slightly from stress and hunger. This mother had been fighting so hard for so long just to keep her babies alive. "What do you suggest we do?" Mayor Thompson asked Sarah, his voice much softer than before. Sarah thought quickly. "Let me take care of them. I'll make sure they have enough food so the mother doesn't need to hunt livestock. Give me a chance to prove they can live here peacefully." Mr. Davies shook his head slowly. "Sarah, that's a huge responsibility. This creature and her pups, they're wild animals. What happens if someone gets hurt?" Tom Bradley, the butcher, stepped forward. "I could help," he said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him in surprise. "I've got plenty of scraps and bones that usually go to waste. If Miss Mitchell is willing to take on the task of feeding them, I can supply the food at no charge." Mrs. Henderson nodded slowly. "And I suppose if the attacks really have stopped since Sarah started feeding her, maybe we can give it a try, just for a little while to see if it works." One by one, the other villagers began to agree. They were tired of being afraid, tired of living in fear. If there was a chance for peace, even a small one, it was worth trying. Only Mr. Davies remained skeptical, but even he couldn't argue with the logic. "Fine," he said gruffly. "We'll give it 1 month. But at the first sign of trouble, at the first attack, we're coming back to finish this. Understood?" Sarah nodded gratefully, tears of relief streaming down her face. The hunting party slowly backed away from the clearing, calling their dogs to heel. The mother creature watched them go, not moving until every human except Sarah had disappeared into the forest. Then slowly she sat down. Her whole body seemed to relax, as if a terrible weight had been lifted. Sarah approached carefully, speaking in soothing tones. "It's okay now. You're safe. Your babies are safe." Sarah spent the rest of that day at the cave, slowly gaining the mother's trust again. By late afternoon, she was allowed to see the puppies up close. There were 4 of them, all wiggling bundles of fur with closed eyes and tiny paws. Sarah's heart melted at the sight. These were the lives the mother had been fighting so desperately to protect. No wonder she had been so fierce, so determined. Any mother would have done the same. Over the next few weeks, a remarkable transformation took place. Sarah visited the den every day, bringing food and water. The mother creature, whom Sarah started calling Luna because of her yellow moon-like eyes, gradually became more comfortable. The puppies grew stronger and healthier. Their eyes opened, revealing the same intelligent gaze as their mother. They began to play and explore, tumbling over each other in adorable puppy games. But the real change happened in the village. Word spread about the mother and her pups, about Sarah's kindness and dedication. People began to stop by Sarah's cottage, bringing donations of food and supplies. Children drew pictures of Luna and her puppies. Mrs. Henderson even knitted small blankets for them, though Sarah explained they probably wouldn't use them. The fear that had gripped Millbrook transformed into something else: compassion and fascination. 1 month passed, then 2. There were no attacks, no incidents. Luna proved to be a gentle and intelligent creature who wanted nothing more than to raise her puppies in peace. She seemed to understand that the humans of Millbrook had given her a second chance. Sometimes in the evenings, villagers would walk quietly to the edge of the forest, hoping to catch a glimpse of the family. Luna allowed it, seeming to recognize that these humans meant no harm. The puppies grew quickly. By the 3rd month, they were running and playing, their personalities becoming clear. There was a bold male who was always first to explore new things. A shy female who preferred to stay close to her mother. Twin brothers who were inseparable and constantly wrestling. Sarah spent hours watching them, documenting their growth and behavior. She had become their unofficial guardian, the bridge between the wild world and human civilization. Then one day, Dr. Rachel Martinez, a wildlife expert from the nearby university, came to visit. She had heard about the unusual situation in Millbrook and wanted to study Luna and her family. Sarah was nervous at first, worried the scientist might want to capture them or disrupt their peace. But Dr. Martinez was kind and respectful. She observed from a distance, taking notes and photographs without interfering. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Martinez told Sarah after several days of observation. "Luna appears to be a wolf-dog hybrid, probably the offspring of a wolf and a large domestic breed. She's been rejected by both worlds. Too wild for humans, too domesticated for wolf packs. That's why she was alone and desperate. But what you've done here, building this trust, creating this arrangement, it's remarkable. I've never seen anything quite like it." The scientist's words gave Sarah an idea. Could they stay here permanently? Could this be their home? Dr. Martinez considered the question carefully. It's possible with the right management. They would need continued support, boundaries to keep them from wandering too close to the village, and ongoing monitoring. But yes, I believe it could work. You've essentially created a safe zone for them, a place where wild and human worlds coexist peacefully. Sarah's heart soared at the possibility. That evening she sat with Luna, the puppies playing around them. "You hear that, girl? You can stay. This can be your home and your baby's home. You're safe now." Luna looked at Sarah with those intelligent yellow eyes and, in a gesture that never failed to move Sarah to tears, placed her large head on Sarah's lap. The ruthless killer of Millbrook had become her closest friend. 6 months had passed since that fateful day when the hunting party had discovered Luna's secret. Millbrook had changed in ways no one could have predicted. What started as one woman's act of kindness had transformed into a community project that brought everyone together. The village that had once been paralyzed by fear was now known throughout the region for its unique relationship with the wolf-dog family. Dr. Martinez helped establish proper protocols for managing the situation. She secured funding for Sarah to build a proper shelter near her cottage, complete with a large enclosed area where Luna and her pups could roam safely. The university became involved, turning Millbrook into a research site for studying human-wildlife coexistence. Students came to observe and learn, bringing revenue to the village through lodging and meals at the local inn. The puppies, now nearly full-grown, had developed into magnificent creatures. The bold male, whom the village children named Scout, had indeed become an explorer, always the first to investigate any new sound or smell. The shy female, called Whisper, remained gentle and cautious but showed remarkable intelligence. The twin brothers, Thunder and Storm, were inseparable companions who had grown into the largest of the four. Each had their mother's striking yellow eyes and a mixture of wild grace and unexpected gentleness. Sarah's life had transformed completely. She still taught at the village school, but now her lessons often included her students learning about wildlife conservation and the importance of understanding rather than fearing nature. The children loved hearing stories about Luna and her family. Some of the older students volunteered to help with daily feeding and maintenance of the enclosure. What had started as Sarah's solitary mission had become a village-wide commitment. Luna herself had become something of a local celebrity. Photographers came from distant cities to capture images of the magnificent creature and her family. A journalist from a national magazine wrote a feature story titled, "The Beast of Millbrook: How Kindness Tamed a Killer." The story spread across the country, inspiring similar approaches to wildlife management in other communities. Sarah received letters from people around the world, thanking her for showing that compassion could triumph over fear. But the true magic happened in the quiet moments that tourists and journalists never saw. On peaceful evenings, Sarah would sit in the enclosure with Luna and her pups, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The creatures would gather around her, accepting her as part of their pack. Luna would rest her head on Sarah's lap while the pups played nearby. In these moments, Sarah felt a profound sense of connection and purpose she had never experienced before. Mr. Davies, once the most vocal opponent of sparing Luna's life, had become one of the project's biggest supporters. He helped build the enclosure and often brought treats for the wolf dogs. "I was wrong," he admitted to Sarah one day. "I let fear cloud my judgment. Thank you for being braver than the rest of us for seeing what we couldn't see." His words meant more to Sarah than any national recognition could. Mrs. Henderson had also undergone a transformation. She brought her grandchildren to see the wolf dogs regularly, teaching them the same lesson Sarah had learned, that understanding and kindness were more powerful than fear and violence. "They took my chickens," she told her grandchildren, "but they taught me something more valuable. They taught me that every creature deserves a chance, that we should never judge too quickly." As autumn arrived, painting the forest in golds and reds, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey. A year ago, she had been a lonely teacher seeking peace in a quiet village. Now she was surrounded by a community united in compassion, caring for creatures that had once been seen as monsters. The attacks that had terrorized Millbrook seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a story of hope and transformation. Dr. Martinez returned for a follow-up study and was amazed by what she found. "The pups are thriving," she told Sarah. "Luna is healthier than I've ever seen her. But more than that, you've created a model that could change how communities interact with wildlife. You've proven that coexistence is possible, that understanding can replace fear." She paused, smiling. "And you know what the most remarkable part is? You did it all by simply refusing to see a monster. You saw a living being in need, and you chose kindness." The village council officially recognized Sarah's contribution by establishing the Luna Wildlife Education Center on the site. It would serve as both a home for the wolfdog family and an educational facility teaching people about wildlife conservation. Sarah was asked to serve as its director, a role she accepted with joy and humility. The center would ensure that Luna and her family would always be protected and that their story would continue to inspire others. On the 1-year anniversary of their first meeting, Sarah sat on her porch as she had that fateful night. Luna approached and sat beside her, their routine now comfortable and familiar. The pups, now young adults, played in the enclosure nearby. As Sarah stroked Luna's fur, she thought about how one act of kindness had rippled outward, changing not just her life but an entire community's perspective. "You taught us all something important," Sarah whispered to Luna. "You taught us that the things we fear are often just misunderstood, that beneath the appearance of monsters are often beings in pain, in need, deserving of compassion." Luna's yellow eyes gazed at her with understanding, and Sarah could have sworn she saw gratitude reflected there. The ruthless killer of Millbrook had indeed been stopped cold, but not by bullets or traps. It had been stopped by something far more powerful: the simple act of one person choosing to respond to fear with kindness, to danger with understanding, and to violence with compassion. In doing so, Sarah Mitchell had not only saved Luna and her family, but she had also saved her village from becoming defined by fear and hatred. As winter approached and the first snow began to fall, the wolf dogs played in the white powder with childlike joy. Sarah watched them from her cottage window, a warm cup of tea in her hands. The village children pressed their noses against the fence of the enclosure, laughing at the pups' antics. Parents stood beside them, no longer afraid, but filled with wonder at the beauty of these magnificent creatures. Tom Bradley continued to supply meat and bones, refusing any payment. "It's the least I can do," he always said. The entire village had adopted the wolfdog family as their own, proof that communities could transform when they chose compassion over fear. Luna had become a symbol of hope, showing that even the most frightening challenges could be overcome with patience, understanding, and an open heart. Sarah often thought about that first night when Luna had stepped out of the darkness with death in her eyes. She remembered the fear she should have felt but didn't, the connection she sensed beneath the creature's fierce exterior. Her instinct to help rather than harm had changed everything. It had shown her that the greatest act of courage wasn't fighting monsters, but recognizing that monsters were often just reflections of our own fears. Years would pass, and Luna's story would be told and retold, inspiring countless others to choose kindness when faced with fear. The wolf dogs would eventually have families of their own, and the Luna Wildlife Education Center would become a beacon of hope for wildlife conservation efforts worldwide. But the real legacy wasn't in the awards or recognition. It was in the simple truth that one person's choice to feed rather than fight, to understand rather than destroy, had proven that love and kindness could indeed stop even the most ruthless killer cold.